Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schilero on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back to our Wednesday edition. This is the segment when we have the great Ken Bombace. Ken is CEO of Global Threat Solutions, security consulting, protection services, and intelligence offices on both coasts, New York and L.A. Former Army intelligence captain. He led counterinsurgency operations in Samarra, Iraq. He's also a retired criminal intelligence detective, professor of criminal justice, served in Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall, and served at Ground Zero. I'll tell you, we are so lucky to have Ken on the show. We could ask him anything on some of these relevant topics that are coming up right now. So I'm going to throw him a little curveball, although I know he already knows the answer to this. But first of all, let me say hello. Ken Bombace, how are you, my friend?
Hi, Tom. How you doing? Thanks for having me on today.
Always a pleasure. I'll tell you. Yesterday I had Ray Tierney on, so I actually hit him with this. Ray comes on every other week, our DA. And by the way, not only is Ray Tierney a regular guest every other week, you're here every week. We have Errol Toole on, our great sheriff, and now we have our great police commissioner, Rodney Harrison, will be coming in every other Monday also. So we're hitting a lot of the aspects of the criminal justice system. Ken, I don't know if you read Ken, or I'm sure you're familiar with this case. This Brian Walsh character. He lives over there in Cohasset, Massachusetts. He's 47 years old. A very pretty wife, Anna Walsh. Well, apparently Anna had a couple of things to do on New Year's Day, and that was it. Nobody ever heard from her again. By January 4th, her co-workers reported her missing. And so this case is getting a lot of national legs because we in this country, we like to get treated to this stuff, and people follow it with a lot of intrigue. We could mention whether it's the O.J. Simpson case or it's the case of Casey Anthony with her little daughter Kaylee. That received a lot of national attention. I think this one is going to start receiving a lot too. So the police asked Brian a lot of questions, and he gives a lot of crazy answers. They weren't understanding what the heck he was talking about. So he becomes a person of interest. So he ends up getting charged with misleading investigators. I think a lot of it had to do, he didn't report his wife missing. He said some things that they knew were not true, that he should have known were not true. They can't charge him with murder because she's missing, but they don't know that she's dead. They found a bloodied knife in the basement of the home. Here's what I'm getting to this, and because I want to know your expertise on this. Well, of course, they get a search warrant. Again, person of interest, not arrested, folks. Brian Walsh, over there in Cohasset, Massachusetts. Anna Walsh, missing. She's 39 years old. They get, I guess, to do forensics, I guess, a search warrant on his computer. And they found out he did a couple of internet searches. One was how to dismember a body. And the other internet search was how to get rid of a 150-pound woman. Now, I'm thinking about that, and I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, if somebody was to do a crime or plan a crime, would you really go on your computer knowing full well that if you become a suspect or a person of interest, that that's the first thing they would do? And I want to put this question to you also for a comment on this case. How stupid are people, Ken?
Well, the short answer is very stupid, Tom, to keep it simple. But what I would say is this case is so, I mean, if it weren't so tragic, it would almost be funny, right? I mean, I think this person, he's clearly never seen an episode of CSI or Law and Order or NCIS, because there's not one thing that he's done that isn't tragically wrong. And you look at all of these things, the computer, we were talking about this yesterday as far as the Idaho murder case and this one. Two very different cases. But in the modern investigative era, people, the first thing they're doing is they're going to look for video, right? And there's always video. And even in this case with Massachusetts, he said he didn't leave the home for a period of time, and they see him at Home Depot buying $400+ in cleaning supplies. And then he did mention he went to two other locations for like food and something else, and they checked that video. He was never there. Also, as far as technology goes, he said that he saw her leave New Year's Day. Well, they have her phone pinging at the house for 3 more days after that. This isn't 1950. And it's so, some of these mistakes are so easily determined now to be false by investigators. The latest info is they searched a trash facility, I think outside of Boston, and they found within Items found during that search in the trash facility are hacksaw, bloody materials, including towels, and materials consistent with some of the items he purchased at Home Depot. So, look, he was charged so far with just misleading investigators. But there's no doubt in my mind these charges will be upgraded. I mean, everyone knows that he committed this crime. In fact, he was under house arrest, I believe, for a federal investigation involving fraudulent artwork. So this guy is a criminal and not a very good one. But I think that you're going to see these charges upgraded pretty soon.
Yeah, again, and I bring it to your expertise. You were a detective, a highly touted detective. Did you ever meet anybody that stupid, or you would say, "Yeah, Tom, this happens all the time. We meet these people all the time." Is that really the case? Oh,
there are so many stupid criminals out there. It's the one thing that keeps the police busy all the time and gives them a lot of success. I remember just not a homicide case. Just an example was a case of somebody, I think he might have been a gang member, but he had robbed a place, I think with a firearm. And shortly after that, he posted the proceeds on Facebook, and he had a picture of himself, check out what I got. And they went and arrested him. I mean, it was that simple. And you have a lot of stupidity like that in police work. That's just one small example. But, this one sounds like, unlike Idaho, I don't think this might not have been planned. And he's trying to backpedal after he committed a heinous crime, and he's doing a horrible job at it. And every single thing he's done has led investigators to believe that he's the one who committed it. So, again, you're going to see this. This is not a difficult homicide investigation to prove, as unlike the one in Idaho where there was, I think he was, first of all, you're dealing with a PhD criminal justice student who was obsessed, it seems, with these types of crimes and actually did research on this. And even he made such glaring mistakes in hindsight. You wouldn't think that with so many people saying, hey, why is this taking so long? Because we want instant results in the modern era, right? But when you look at it did take some time. Even he made so many glaring mistakes, though. Things that he did that in hindsight led police to him pretty quickly.
Interesting. Going back to the case in Massachusetts. Yeah, I often wonder, again, you have a lot more greater experience than my contact with people like that, is that, didn't they ever hear of divorce? Does that never enter into it? If you don't want to be married anymore, rather than do an internet search as how to get rid of your 150-pound wife, then maybe you should just call a divorce lawyer. It's probably a lot easier than it's going to a criminal lawyer to try to get him out of a life imprisonment term. I mean, again, I'm just looking at the common sense of this thing. I find it amazing that in this world such people do exist. But going to the Idaho case, diabolical. I don't know how else to say that. Just you feel for the families and the losses that they had in that case. Anything about that case that we could find somewhat unusual in terms of the way in which the act of commission or the act of omission, or what may you say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just what everybody kind of said since the beginning. Anyone who's followed this is just for one suspect to come into a house and murder with a knife 4 people like that. That in itself is not normal. That nobody would be alerted and possibly be able to escape. That part of it is in diabolical, clearly. And eerie, too. I don't know if you saw yesterday, information came out from this investigation that when there was one of the surviving roommates or housemates who were downstairs actually hears a male voice she didn't recognize say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." And then when she goes out into the hallway or by her door, she watches this individual dressed in black with a mask walk right towards her, and then he leaves the building. It's eerie to even hear, and he didn't kill her. I'm not sure that it hasn't come out exactly if he, we don't know if he saw her. But the way they describe it seems like that he should have. And the other thing is she then waited 5 or 6 hours to call the police because, we don't know that answer yet. Maybe she thought it was a domestic and didn't want to get involved. And I don't think she thought that there was 4 dead people upstairs. And then she ends up calling hours later and they discover this gruesome crime scene. But that is that's a case that I'm sure will be studied in criminal justice programs for a long time once we get more details out. And I think one thing that just came out today, Tom, was that another piece of information is one of the attorneys for the victim's family said that the suspect did not know them prior to this. Now, we'll see if that turns out to be true, but that's what came out today.
Well, it gets you thinking quite a bit, and I know that's why the media likes to play this stuff up, because the people like to hear this stuff. But many of us look at this to learn from it and to just wonder what goes on in other worlds. And I say other worlds, other people's lives, and so on. Let's get right closer to home here. Kathy Hochul made her state of the state. I was able to get some of it. It was going on during yesterday's airtime while we were on the air, so we were able to get some of it. But you and I both concerned about criminal justice legislation and so on. Did she say anything in there where she might be saying, I need to pay attention to the 48% that voted against me, that voted for a candidate who was pro-cop, pro criminal justice, and pro laws that protect public safety? And I'm talking about Lee Zeldin. Did she say anything to show that she's going to take that into consideration?
Well, Tom, I think she said a lot. There was a lot of rhetoric, but I think she made it sound like she's doing a lot. But when you look at the details, I don't know if there's that much substance. Really, what she says is she's giving more funding to existing programs. So she mentioned that she's going to expand the New York State Police Community Stabilization Units, which is basically state police assisting local departments. She's going to put more troopers in federal task forces. She's going to put in more classes of state police. She's going to double the funding for nationally recognized as gun-involved violence, or GIVE program, which is she's going to just give more funding to that existing program. And then she also says reinvestment in alternatives to incarceration. That's going to be your probation, your parole, and anything outside of jails and prisons. So really what it comes down to is nothing innovative. She's giving more money it's more of the same. And the bottom line is the same hasn't been working. What we really need is actual policy changes. Specifically, you and I both know, big changes to this bail reform that took place. And the one, she did make a change, but it was a very slight change. She basically says judges now will be able to, they won't have to use the least restrictive measure to make sure someone returns to court. It was very, it's not a big change to the existing bail reform that they put in place a few years ago, Democrats put in place. We needed more than that. So honestly, money always helps. What is this money going to go to? It's going to go towards overtime. It's going to go towards salaries, and it's going to go towards task force, which costs money. But if our model of criminal justice in New York State hasn't been working and crime has been so out of control right now, I don't think just more money is going to be the solution to this. I think there needs to be drastic policy changes. I don't think we saw that yesterday.
No, I don't think so either. I look at other states, whether it's Florida, I know it's one of the states, the Carolinas, they tend to pass pretty good, sound criminal justice legislation when it comes to incarceration, when it comes down to pretrial detention and so on. And sometimes you wonder, why don't we have that here? Is that far left? Has that hijacked our government? And that's a rhetorical question, because I would answer that yes, the far left has hijacked our state legislature, our state senate, our state assembly, and for some reason, when she was in Congress, she was a moderate. She received high ratings from police organizations, the NRA. She was a Second Amendment person, believed in the rights of law-abiding citizens to own firearms. All of that has changed, and it's very frustrating to talk about her proposals when in essence it's not really who she was back in the day when she was in the House of Representatives and how she did vote. So I guess I get a little concerned when I hear you speak and talk about the level of what should be, but I worry because I don't think it will be, and I hate to be that way. I really do, but there's so many pieces of legislation that I would promote in Albany that could work specifically well. And I know Doug Smith and I had talked about a piece, and we actually wrote it up, and he submitted the bill, and the bill is still around, that would make it a felony to interfere with a police officer in the performance of their duties. But it goes on every single day in this country by Second and First Amendment auditors and people who feel they have the right to interfere or to stop what our officers are doing. And yet they have a law like that in Florida. It was no problem. The governor proposed it. The legislature voted on it. And now you can't go within a certain amount of feet of a police officer to interfere when they are doing something. Here, you can stick a camera in their face and you can call them tyrants, like that First Amendment audit guy does over there. He lives over there in Medford or Patchogue, wherever he lives. That's all this guy does, is harass our police and harass the little old ladies that work in some of these government buildings when the police are called to help them out. It makes no sense to me. And yet, we'll never see legislation like that, Ken?
Yeah, so listen, Tom, like I said, money always helps, but what we see here, what we really need here is significant changes to bail and not slight changes. She's trying to do this balancing act where she is also applauding bail reform enacted by Democrats in New York, and she's ensuring she will not increase jail population. She says this. And unfortunately, Tom, we've talked about this so much before. I think we both agree. We need more people in jail. I don't know how else to say it, but there is a relatively small part of our population that commits the majority of the crimes. These are career criminals. They're very resistant to reform and rehabilitation. Some people just need to be incarcerated to keep them from victimizing people. And I think there was just a lot of rhetoric yesterday, a lot of more of the same that doesn't work. And she made such slight changes in any real significant policy in New York State that I don't think we're going to see a big difference in crime rates. And this is not a robust crime fighting initiative that New York requires right now to bring safety back to our communities.
And nobody gets hurt by protecting public safety. The only people that get hurt are the career criminals that want to be out on the streets and walking around in gun-free zones with guns so that they could take your car and take your wallet or take your Rolex watch, which many people don't have, and do all that sort of those sorts of crimes. It doesn't make any sense. AOC not too long ago, she wrote a paper that how you could reduce crime by shutting down prisons. So, of course, I read it. It made no sense. It was like she was living on another planet. It was like an alternative universe type of paper. And yet now I'm thinking that she has a following. She's got people in the state assembly, state senate. Maybe Kathy Hochul is following that prescription or so on. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If you remember back in the day that we had overcrowded prisons. Remember when we were building prisons and the whole idea? Once that happened, crime rates went down. Because of what you just said. Small percentage of people committing the majority of crimes. Take that small percentage, put them in a 6x9, and then you don't have any crime. It's that simple. But we won't do that because we like them. We care about them while they're shooting you.
Yeah. And you could, of course, arrest fewer people and then crime looks like it went down, but that's not going to make anyone safer. And I'll tell you another thing we haven't touched on, and she didn't either, is they've demonized these street crime units, and all departments use different terminology for that. But these street crime units, especially in New York City, we've seen them demonized in there where they've had to change the names of them and their mission and everything else. Those proactive units are the ones that really go after the bad people in society. Your regular police officer on patrol is reactive, and they're just going call to call, 911 calls, and responding. Do they get some bad guys during their course of their day? Of course, that happens. But those street crime units, they're the ones who are aggressive. These are good cops, people who have moved out of patrol into these units, oftentimes plainclothes, and they're the ones getting guns and drugs and bad people off the streets. And it's like they don't like the idea of that, this progressive part of our state. And so they're trying to do away with that type of policing. It's exactly what we need. It is the most effective part of our policing. Even detective work, really, it's reactive, right? They're investigating crimes that were committed. There are some units that are going out and doing sting operation things. But for the most part, these street crime units, these are the ones that are going after on a regular basis the worst parts of society, the most dangerous people. And they're effective. They get guns off the street and they've handcuffed them. And now that's why one of the main reasons I think you're seeing such out of control of that and bail reform. You're seeing such out of control crime.
And nothing was said to at least bring it to a more common sense approach. Believe it or not, we're at the end of our line right here with Ken Bombace. Ken, we'll talk to you again next week, my friend.